welcome to Fun with Watches, because if watches weren't fun, we'd only need one. Let's start out this review with a wrist check. I'm wearing my Neymar 41mm 300-meter diver's watch with helium escape valve. Grogu here, he's wearing a Casio CA53W calculator watch. This review will be done Mr. Hands style. I don't know if you remember Mr. Hands from the Mr. Bill show, but you only ever saw Mr. Hands' hands. Hopefully I'm much nicer to my watches than Mr. Hands was ever to Mr. Bill. Needless to say, it's much easier to make a review this way because I can do it by myself. I do not need somebody else to operate the camera. The watch I'll be reviewing is a Fossil FB-GMT LE1100 Titanium. This is my first titanium watch. I did handle a Tudor Pelagos at the authorized dealer once, but obviously I did not purchase that as it is $4,500. This watch was much more affordable as it only cost me $118 on a big Black Friday sale. Okay, here is the watch. As you can see, it's a very nice looking watch. I wouldn't call it a Batman, as the color of blue is much different than the color of blue on the Rolex. Plus, the face of the Fossil does not appear to be trying to imitate anything other than Fossil design. I was concerned about buying this watch at first because Fossil didn't give much information about it on their website. The movement was described as dual time, and it didn't give any information about the country of origin or what model number of movement it was. This watch is a limited edition of 954 pieces. Why 954? Seems like an odd number. Usually when they have a number that's not rounded up to the nearest tens, that usually there's some significance in the number. The only thing I can think of is they're going off of 1954, but didn't want to make 1954 watches, so they just conveniently took 1,000 away from it. 1954 was a significant date for diving watches, as it was when the Rolex Submariner was released to the general public. And if you look at the book that came with this, a rather large book, if you look on the first page, Fossil is promoting this as a reinterpretation of a traditional dive watch. So they are pushing the dive watch ability of this watch more so than the GMT. Given the fact that this is a 200-meter rated watch. But looking at this rather large book, you'd think, well, maybe it would tell me what the movement was. Well, unfortunately, this book is basically 4 pages repeated over and over in different languages. And there is no information at all about the movement. At 46 millimeters, this is a very big watch. But since it is made of titanium, it is still very light. In fact, it is 60 grams lighter than that Neymar watch I showed you earlier, even though the fact that the Neymar watch is much smaller in size. I must say I really like the titanium. It has a really nice feel to it. And the matte finish looks really good on it. It gives it this nice industrial look. It's not a shiny watch at all. In fact, the colors they chose for the bezel are flat, which I think match the titanium of the bracelet and the case very well. The lug-to-lug is 53.5 millimeters, But as you can see, it has protruding center links, which go from to 57.2 millimeters. And the height is 14.2 millimeters, which is somewhat tall, but due to the fact that this is a big watch, it doesn't look tall. The weight is 130 grams, which I just think is amazing for a fully braceleted watch of this size. I do not know what the crystal is made of, and I do not have a diamond tester to test to see if it is sapphire or not. I'm assuming if it was sapphire, they would advertise that fact. As it is, they do not mention the crystal material at all, which would, I would assume, means it is mineral crystal. As you can see too, the bezel itself is also crystal. I'm assuming it's the same material, but once again, they do not say, and I do not have anything to test it. The bezel is kind of odd. It's a 90 click bezel. A lot of GMT, a lot of more affordable GMT watches use diving bezels just as a cost saver. And most of them are 120 click, which makes sense for a GMT watch because 24 divides into 120 evenly. 24 does not divide into 90 evenly, but it's close enough, and I really don't think that you would really notice that every once in a while it will not line up with the minute markers exactly. The bezel action's nice. It feels good. It's not too hard to turn, and little back play, but not much. And it lines up nicely. One thing about this is I wasn't sure, what is this other crown for? Turns out that when you open this other crown, it turns the inner chapter ring. So it's an inner bezel that you can use it as a timing bezel. Not sure if that was necessary. I can't imagine ever needing to use this. And it adds that second crown, which is just kind of, I think, takes away from the appearance of the watch. If you look at the back of the watch, you can see that the bracelet has quick release on the end links, and this makes it kind of nice because they're very large too, so it's fairly simple to pull the bracelet off the end. Not that you would change bracelets on this, since the titanium bracelet is so nice. Why would you ever want to put it on a strap? But it makes it nice when you're going to take the back off to change the battery, or to check the movement, since the company doesn't tell you what the movement is. So anyway, I did take off the back to check the movement, and the movement is a Ronda, which, as everybody knows, Ronda is a well-respected Swiss-made movement company. But when you look at the movement itself, it says Swiss parts, Thailand made. So this particular movement was made in Thailand, even though it's of Swiss design and Swiss parts. And for a watch that cost me $118, I'm fine with that. I'm kind of relieved knowing that I didn't get a piece of junk movement. Yes, it's not Swiss made, but very close to Swiss made. Since I have the bracelet removed, I'll show you the sizing links. As you can see, the arrows go in both directions. This is kind of odd. I've never had a watch like that, but you can push the pins out in either direction. I guess it's kind of like when Yogi Berra said, when you get to the fork in the road, take it. I had to take 2 links out to size this to my 7.5-inch wrist. Also, as you can see, the clasp is also titanium. In many cases, titanium watches have stainless steel clasps, so it's kind of nice to know that this one has a full titanium, especially if you're one of those that have a nickel allergy and need titanium due to the fact that steel makes you break out. As you can see, the clasp has a single pusher that's indented. This seems to be a unique design to Fossil. I've never seen this in any other watch other than a Fossil. One issue with this though, it looks nice and it seems to work very well. But when you take it out, as you can see, the clasping mechanism is rather large and it takes up a lot of room in the clasp, which doesn't give you very much room at all for micro adjusters. There's 3 micro adjusters there, but they are very close together and do not take up a full length of bracelet. So usually if you have micro adjusters, you want to at least cover a link. That way you can get the perfect fit. But since this watch is so light, the perfect fit isn't quite as important. If it's a little loose, it's okay because it doesn't flop around because it's so heavy. Okay, let's go ahead and try this thing on. Once again, I have a 7.5-inch wrist. As you can see, even though it's a very big watch, it still fits my wrist okay. I think as long as you have at least a 7-inch wrist, you should be fine. Anything smaller, I don't know if you could pull it off. Also, there's only 2 more links of bracelet to remove. So if you had to be much smaller than 7, I don't know if you could remove enough bracelet. Okay, let's talk some more about the movement. I didn't see a model number on the movement, but I'm pretty sure it's a 505.24H movement because it behaves exactly like my Sterling GMT, which has that particular movement. One thing about this movement, obviously it does not have a jumping hour hand because that would be a big deal being a GMT watch, but it doesn't have a jumping GMT hand either. So when you go to adjust the watch, when you move it to the second position, if you move it to the left counterclockwise, it moves the GMT hand, but it doesn't jump. So when you set the GMT hand, you have to set it precisely. And of course, since you can only turn it in one direction, if you go too far, you got to start over and go all the way around again, which makes it kind of a pain to set. Of course, being a GMT hand, you're only going to have to set it daylight savings and the repeal of daylight savings, or if you travel and change time zones. Of course, with the timing bezel like that, you could just rotate the bezel and just leave the GMT hand where it is, which is what I think I'm going to do once I reset it after this review. Okay, let's check out the lume on the watch. Give it a little charge here. And then let's go ahead and cut the lights. Sorry, I don't have total darkness. Okay, as you can see, the hands and the glow pretty good. The lume on the indices, you can barely see it. You could see it better if it was pitch dark in here, but it's not. And as you can see, there's no lume whatsoever on the bezel, which is a shame because it's supposed to be a diver's watch, and so at least the pip should be lumed. So if I have that little lume pip dot on the arrow, if you're not going to even lume it, I think that was kind of a mistake. Okay, my final thoughts on this watch. I'm very pleased with this watch. It's one of my favorites. I'm glad I bought it. What I really like about it is the titanium. I mean, the titanium is so light, it has a great feel to it, and it looks great. Plus, I really like the look of the watch. I think the flat colors go with the titanium very well. And I like the fact that, too, it's a unique looking watch. I mean, it has that Fossil look, but it's not trying to look like a Rolex or any other more prestigious watch. So it's kind of has its own identity, which is one of my complaints, is it has a weird kind of lack of identity. Fossil is trying to make this a diver's watch when it's clearly a GMT watch. And so it's kind of like, and once again, why have 954 limited edition, basing it on the year 1954 when it's not really a diver's watch at all. So, but that's just a minor complaint. I mean, my watch doesn't have to tell a story. I think it's a cool watch. I really like it, and I would recommend it to anybody who is interested in this watch. All right, I hope you enjoyed my first review. Feel free to leave comments and suggestions. I'm sure there's many complaints, but please be nice. After all, we are discussing watches and not religion or politics, or whether or not Grogu is a good name for the child. All right, bye.